start us off, so that's right. Yeah. I'll ring the.
Hello.
Nancy's going to come up to do.
That's very loud, a lot louder than I was expecting it to be. Hi, I am Ashley Anderson, and I will be serving as your celebrant today. I am a new UU, and today's topic really touches my heart. I am passionate about disability access, due in large part to growing up with a severely disabled father, marrying into a deaf family, over here, and dealing with my own mental and physical struggles throughout my life. Living with and loving disabled individuals helps you really understand how the world just isn't made for us. Am I going too fast for you? Okay. Living with and loving disabled individuals helps you really understand how the world just isn't made for us. We are often ignored, overlooked, or discarded entirely. That's why it makes me so happy to see this church focus specifically on disability access and making sure everyone, regardless of ability, has a place here. I would like to extend a special welcome to all those who are joining us for the first time. We are very glad that you are here. If you've come in person, you should have received a welcome packet with an information card in it. If you fill that out and drop it in the offering basket, we will be in touch to support you in finding your way into our community. If you are joining us online, there is a link on our website to an electronic version of that same card. Our welcoming committee members have yellow name tags and can answer any questions or point you towards additional information. Whether you are new or not, please consider staying for coffee and conversation after the service, either downstairs in our fellowship hall or in our Zoom room. And before we say our words of welcome, I should introduce our translator here today. This is Kane Anderson, my wonderful husband. And I will try to go slow for him. Okay.
I haven't interpreted since high school, okay?
He's more used to interpreting for his parents. Okay, so now let's say our words of welcome together. Whether this is your first or your 1000th Sunday with us, and whether you strolled, zoomed, ran, or danced in, we are glad you chose to join us. We are one people of many beliefs, identities, origins, sexualities, and genders. All are welcome here. Now we will take a moment to say hello across the technical divide. First, we're going to show the people joining us on Zoom. If you are at home, please turn on your camera. Now, people at home, wave. Now, people who are attending the service in our building, it's your turn to wave. And we don't have any announcements, right? We do have one. We have one announcement.
My name is Nancy Nelson, and I am a co-coordinator of Family Promise at the UUCP. Family Promise is a program that shelters homeless family in churches on the Palouse. Churches take turns, and our turn is coming up. It is the first week of April, and a Sign Up Genius is out now so that you can be part of this wonderful and important service of sheltering families. There's an additional thing that we'll be doing, and that is feeding people, eating with people at the church for suppers. And I know that that's something that people enjoy doing and having the chance to talk to people. If you have any questions about the sign up, if you have any trouble accessing it, please let me know. I would be happy to help. Thank you.
So that was our announcement. We preface our service by acknowledging our church was built on the ancestral homelands of the Nimipu, called Nez Perce by the French-speaking traders, the Palouse, and the Shishumps. called the Coeur d'Alene. Let us pause and remember that we live on ground that is sacred, ground that was stolen, ground that cries out for justice and for responsible stewardship. May our remembering help us find the courage to do our part to restore wholeness to the earth and all her peoples. We are hoping that folks joining us via Zoom have a chalice or a candle to light and something to light it with. Let's light our chalices together. In the light of truth and the warmth of love, we gather to seek and seek to share.
I am so excited to have sign interpreters. So it was Roger Wallens who helped me see it. We were sitting together in the back of the sanctuary because he had bad knees and bad feet. And at the time, my office was up a steep set of stairs in that corner. He explained to me why he rarely came to church anymore. He was so apologetic. It had to do with getting to the bathroom. If he had to pee in the middle of the service, he couldn't make it down the stairs. He could, in theory, go outside, down the ramp, around the block, and back in the accessible entrance downstairs. But that took so long that most of the time he decided it was simpler to stay home. He said he felt embarrassed to say anything, that he felt ashamed, and it broke my heart. Within a few months, maybe even a few weeks, we'd moved my office down into the basement so that at least people could meet with their minister in an accessible space. And we began the conversation about our building. Fast forward, I think about 6 years, and now we have this beautiful, renovated, and expanded facility with an elevator and accessible bathrooms on every floor. But making our building accessible to people with mobility issues was only the beginning. Since we have moved back into this space, the worship committee has been having conversations pretty much every month in our meetings about how to make our worship services more accessible to people with visual impairments and or hearing deficits. We've been quietly adding technologies, fine-tuning our display options, and while we have some things that we are still working on, it seemed like a good moment to bring the rest of you into the conversation so that you know what supports are available. We also know that including more perspectives means we will make better decisions. If there's more that we can do to help you feel valued, to help you participate more fully, please let us know. The goal is clear, and the reasoning behind it. Because we believe in the inherent worth and dignity of all people, and more in the unique wisdom and beauty of all people, we need to do everything we can to create full inclusion, which means our goal is to support everyone who wants to be a part of our community in whatever ways allow them to bring their whole self here, to be appreciated, learned from, and loved throughout their entire lives. We're not going to do this perfectly, but we will keep trying to do it better. What a gift it would have been to have had Roger here and participating fully during the last few years of his life. I wonder what other gifts are waiting for us as we continue on this journey of expanding access and offering one another radical hospitality. Let's reflect on it together, and let's begin by singing hymn number 128, For All That Is Our Life.
Turns off whenever I put it on the phone. Oh, I think it's hitting that bottom button.
Yeah. Okay.
I won't let it hit the bottom button. Okay. Now let's take a moment to engage in the practice of generosity together. For those of you able to make a financial contribution, the logistics are on your screen. We typically give away all of the cash from our Sunday offering to local charities whose missions align with our values, a program called the Month of Sundays. This month, the recipient is the Latah Recovery Center, whose mission is to support people in recovery from addictions and behavioral health disorders through peer-to-peer interaction and evidence-based practices to promote a healthy community. To donate, please indicate Month of Sundays on your check or from the online drop-down menu. In the spirit of love and for the continuing work of this church, we will now take some time to practice generosity together.
I'm going to ask Elizabeth to light our candle of broader concern. I didn't know ahead of time what Krista was going to be talking about, so there may be some repetition. Because I thought today we would light our candle of broader concern in honor of Judy Heumann, widely known as the mother of the disability rights movement. She passed away just a little over a week ago on March 4th. As Krista told us, she was born in 1947 and raised in Brooklyn, New York, contracted polio when she was 2. Her doctor suggested to her parents that she be institutionalized when it was clear she would never be able to walk. Institutionalization was the status quo in 1949. She wrote, "Kids with disabilities were considered a hardship, economically and socially." Krista told us the story of her failed attempt to go to kindergarten and being labeled a fire hazard. But her parents, particularly her mother, fought back and demanded that Judy have access to the classroom. So she eventually attended a special school, then high school, then Long Island University, from which she earned her bachelor's in 1969, and the University of California, Berkeley, where she earned a master's in public health 6 years later. Judy was at the forefront of major disability rights demonstrations and organizations, helped spearhead the passage of disability rights legislation, founded national and international disability advocacy organizations, and held senior federal government positions. Her memoir, if you're interested in learning more about her, is called Being Human, and there's a young adult version called Rolling Warrior. Judy was also featured in the Oscar-nominated documentary film Crip Camp. "Some people say that what I did changed the world," she wrote. "But really, I simply refused to accept what I was told about who I could be, and I was willing to make a fuss about it." So today we give thanks for her life and her work, even as we mourn all the people who didn't have enough folks to fight for them, and whose light, whose spirit were ignored or even smothered by the toxic ableism in our culture. So let's breathe together, dreaming of a world where everyone has the support that they need to shine. And let us recommit to building that world together. And now I invite Elizabeth Berlinger, a member of our pastoral care team, forward to lead the lighting of candles of joy and sorrow. I invite us into a time of meditation this morning with these words by the Reverend Teresa Inés Soto. This is called Now I Love You, Now I Witness. I know sometimes you get cranky, and sometimes your tea gets cold before you can drink it. Sometimes the news is too much. The resistance seems too little. That's real. But we are here, imperfect and together and reaching. You can hold my hand if you want. I washed it with soap. It's okay. In this kind of time, now is better than later. Now I love you. Now I am sorry it hurts. Now I witness your struggle and mine. Sometimes one answer is to be a yes in the face of every no. I am a yes for you, now and again later, if you need me. Let's rest in the silence together. Amen, and blessed be.
So before we start, I'm going to teach you a couple signs so you can sign along with us. So those two signs are true and colors. So for true, I want you all to take your finger like that, put it on your chin, and point it out. True. True. Okay? And then for colors, you're going to take your hand, and you're going to face your palm towards your face, and you're going to wiggle your fingers on your chin. And that's colors. So true, colors. And now you can join us.
So our readings this morning are a little bit longer than usual, but I think they set up our service pretty well. The first comes from A Disability History of the United States by Kim Nielsen. She writes, "Which peoples and which parties have been considered fit and appropriate for public life and active citizenship? How have people with disabilities forged their own lives, their own communities, and shaped the United States? How has disability affected law, policy, economics, play, national identity, and daily life?" The answers to these questions reveal a tremendous amount about us as a nation. When disability is considered to be synonymous with deficiency and dependency, it contrasts sharply with American ideals of independence and autonomy. Thus, disability has served as an effective weapon in contests over power and ideology. For example, at varying times, African Americans, immigrants, gays and lesbians, poor people, and women have been defined categorically as defective citizens incapable of full civic participation. In this version of the national story, independence is good and dependency is bad. Dependency means inequality, weakness, and reliance on others. When disability is equated with dependency, disability is stigmatized. Citizens with disabilities are labeled inferior citizens. When disability is understood as dependency, disability is posited in direct contrast to the American ideals of independence and autonomy. The second is a poem by Mara Sapon-Shevin, and it's written for the children of Jawonio, a fully inclusive school. The children of Jawonio know, not because they have been told, but because they have lived it, that there is always room for everyone in the circle, and at snack time, and on the playground. And even if they have to wiggle a little to get another body in, and even if they have to find a new way to do it, they can figure it out. And so it might be reasonable to assume that there's enough room for everyone in the world. The children of Jawonio know, not because they have been told, but because they have lived it, that children come in a dazzling assortment of sizes, colors, and shapes, big and little, and all shades of brown and beige and pink. And some walk, and some use wheelchairs, but everyone gets around. And that same is boring. And so it might be reasonable to assume that everyone in the world could be accepted for who they are. The children of Jawonio know, not because they've been told, but because they have lived it, that there are people who talk with their mouths, and people who talk with their hands, and people who talk by pointing, and people who tell us all we need to know with their bodies if we only listen well. And so it might be reasonable to assume that all people of the world could learn to talk and listen to each other. The children of Jawonio know, not because they have been told, but because they have lived it, that we don't send people away because they're different, or even because they're difficult. and that all people need support, and that if people are hurting, we take time to notice, and that words can build bridges, and hugs can heal. So it might be reasonable to assume that all the people on the planet could reach out to each other and heal the wounds and make a world fit for us all. How am I doing, Kane? Am I going at the right speed?
You're going at the perfect speed.
Awesome. So we live in a country where disability is equated with dependency and stigmatized. We live in a country mired in an illness model where some ways of being human in a body are labeled in need of a cure. We live in a country where people who need additional support to participate have had to fight like hell to get basic accommodations. I want to live in a world, oh shoot, why are you making me sign back in? Somewhere in here I'm going to start just printing out paper again. It's wasteful, but it doesn't disappear on me. I want to live in a world where there's room for everyone, and everyone is accepted just as they are. I want to live in a world where everyone gets to have a voice, regardless of the way in which they communicate. I want to live in a world where asking for and getting support is an easy and unremarkable choice. I want to live in a world where everyone is seen and treated as a holy being. No exceptions. So how do we get from where we are to where we want to be? We advocate, we partner, we listen and learn and follow the lead of people who have experienced discrimination or marginalization. We put our money where our mouths are and do what's needed to break down barriers to participation and full inclusion in as many spaces as we can. We create microcosms, smaller scale experiences of inclusion and acceptance that prove that another way is possible and better. Microcosms that give folks a chance to see just how beautiful the world can be. How many of you have seen the movie Crip Camp? I recommend it highly, very highly. It's on Netflix. If there's interest, I'm happy to arrange for a showing here, or maybe even a showing at the Kenworthy. It's a documentary that tracks a group of activists, including Judy Heumann, who met at a hippie camp for kids with disabilities run in the Catskills back in the 1960s. I'll be honest with you, the footage from Camp Jened made me squirm a little bit. I don't think they had much in the way of safety rules. But what they had was a place where disabled people were treated like people, not problems. Everyone waited and listened to the folks whose speech was slow or slurred. People in wheelchairs played baseball and swam and made music and made out with one another. It was a place where everyone could bring their full self, no exceptions, and be treated as a whole and holy being. The experience inspired several of the campers to become activists, to fight for Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act, staging that sit-in that lasted for 26 days, and ultimately pressuring the Carter administration to sign a law providing equal opportunity for employment within the federal government for people with physical or mental disabilities, and establishing the Architectural and Transportation Barriers Compliance Board, which mandated equal access to public services, such as public housing and public transportation, to people with disabilities. When the law wasn't enforced, they took to the streets again and again and again for decades of protests that culminated in the Capitol stair climb in March of 1990 and the signing into law of the American with Disabilities Act, the ADA, just a few months later. An 8-year-old girl, Jennifer Keelan Chaffins, was the youngest activist to complete the stair climb, and I'll tell you what, watching her make that climb, I sobbed. Toward the end of the movie, Denise Jacobson, a writer and a mom with a master's degree in human sexuality, who happens to have CP, says, you can pass a law, but until you change society's attitudes, that law won't mean much. So that's where we are now. We need to do our part to change society's attitudes, which means starting with our own. Until my conversation with Roger Wallens about how hard it was to get to the bathroom, I hadn't really thought much about the lack of accessibility in our building. Even though my office was 3 flights away from the bathrooms in the basement, and even though as someone with an autoimmune disease, there were days when every one of those steps hurt. I'm so proud of this community for what we've done to make it more possible for people with mobility issues to participate fully. Not that we're perfect. I know I have to get better about thinking through ritual with that lens in place in particular. But things are so much better than they were. And we're not stopping there. When people shared that they were having a hard time reading the screens, we consulted with Krista and did some research and changed our font and our background colors, and it's better now, isn't it? We've also been working on expanding accessibility for people who are deaf or hard of hearing. I've printed out hard copies of the service elements for years now. They're always available on the welcome table. That's the low tech. Then there's the new tech. We can't put closed captions up on the screens in the sanctuary, but we have some tablets. You can get them at the audio booth. And those tablets have the closed captions already enabled. We have assisted listening devices, and we're in the process of purchasing a new gadget that will allow people whose hearing aids are Bluetooth enabled to connect directly to our sound system output and adjust their hearing aids as needed. When I first found out that Ashley and Kane knew ASL, I got pretty excited. I think it came up because I mentioned that I had wanted to learn ASL, which I still do, and which I still may do. Anyway, what an opportunity. They've offered to help us all learn some basic signs so that we can welcome people who speak ASL, let them know where the bathrooms are, that sort of thing. Ryan and Ginger and I have also been watching a series of webinars offered by the UUA on embracing neurodivergence in community. Every brain works differently, just like every body works differently. And brains have gifts and challenges. If we listen to each other and make adjustments accommodations, and allowances as needed, we wind up with a much richer and deeper pool of collective wisdom. I've also attended special trainings on supporting people with mental illness, in particular PTSD, as they enter into community. That's why I actually insisted we keep the pews along the back wall, with apologies to Donna Bradbury. I know they interfere in her aesthetic. But it's tricky because different people have different needs and different people have different triggers. Mostly, removing barriers to participation requires working with each individual. We need to take the time to engage and learn, and people need to be brave enough to communicate what support they need. Are you familiar with the concept of universal design? So I'm a long way from an expert, but essentially it begins with a commitment to keep making our buildings and our programs accessible to everyone, regardless of age, ability, or other factors. When we think about doing church well through the lens of universal design, it gets kind of complicated because different people can have conflicting accessibility needs. An easy example has to do with masks. People who are immunocompromised or have other risk factors can only participate fully if everyone around them is wearing a mask. People who are hard of hearing and depend on lip reading can only participate fully when people aren't wearing masks. Krista has that great clear mask. I've thought maybe we should get them for all of us. But the rest of us have to sort of juggle. We put it on and then we take it off. We put it on in crowds. We keep our distance. And of course, we always provide the online options for completely germ-free participation. So you see what I mean? It does get complicated, but it's doable if we keep learning and experimenting and hopefully getting closer to that goal of full participation for everyone. There's a psychological barrier that has to do with internalized ableism, or maybe internalized ageism. Example number one is actually me limping up and down 3 flights of stairs and pretending it didn't hurt because I didn't want anyone to think of me as less capable because I have an inflammatory disease. But I don't think I'm the only one. It's hard to admit sometimes that we're struggling to hear, to see, to move, to participate. Somehow our crazy, stupid society has linked our worth to our abilities. Here's the thing though, at this church, we know that our worth is inherent. So can we be brave enough to admit when we need support or accommodations? Can we trust that we are loved enough that people will offer that support and provide those accommodations? And can we be patient while we work through the complicated particulars? One thing that I've observed in folks who are aging is that sometimes people let pride get the better of them. They don't want to admit they're unsteady on their feet. So instead of getting a cane or a walker, they stop going out. Then they become deconditioned, and by the time they're forced to accept a mobility aid, it's almost too late. I also know people who have a hard time admitting they can't hear. They're too embarrassed to make that call to the audiologist. So they stop going places. They stop participating in activities they used to enjoy and become increasingly isolated. And I know some of you have heard me say this before. It's one of my favorite soapboxes. Aging goes better for people who are early adapters of assistive technologies. I know that as soon as I am unsteady on my feet, I'm going to get a cane so I can keep walking, maintaining muscle tone and mobility. And as soon as I have a hard time hearing, I'll make that darn appointment to see the audiologist, because I don't want to miss out on a single moment of connection and conversation. Beyond what we can do as individuals, though, we have a moral responsibility as a community to remove as many barriers to participation as we can. So if you have a barrier to your participation at this church, please let us know, because we are better together. It's not a simple black and white issue, people with disabilities on one side and people who are so-called normal on the other. No body is perfect, and every body deteriorates over the years. Every brain works a little differently. We all carry wounds and scars, both visible and invisible. Normal is only a setting on the dryer. When we forget to think about life, or a building, or a home, or a society, using the particular lens of physical, mental, or emotional challenges, we reinforce the barriers put in place by so many years of oppression and discrimination. And the people who are on both sides of that barrier are poorer for it. So let's continue to work to bring the barriers down, because while it is true that no body is perfect, within each imperfect and beautiful body dwells a spirit that is holy and whole and deserving of unconditional love. Within each imperfect and beautiful body lives a person who has something to teach us, a perspective to offer that will help us make sense of this world. Within each imperfect and beautiful body is a human being with inherent worth and dignity, full of grace and wisdom and challenging truths. And we all deserve to love and be loved, to know and to be known, to cherish and to be cherished. No exceptions. So be it, and blessed be. I invite you now to rise in body or spirit. Let's sing hymn number 131, Love Will Guide Us. Our closing reading comes from Sitting Pretty, The View from My Ordinary, Resilient, Disabled Body by Rebecca Tausig. When I was small and just learning how to do life in my body, I didn't hesitate, didn't hold back, didn't worry how it would look, didn't look for cues or ask for a line. My imagination ruled. I was entirely free to be, driven by the innovation my body inspired. This is the wild emancipation I wish for all of us. A world where we are all free to be, to move, to exist in our bodies without shame. A world that isn't interested in making all of its humans operate in the exact same way. A world that instead strives to invite more, include more, imagine more. That world sees the humans existing on the margins and says, "You have what we want. What barriers can we remove so we can have you around? What do you need? How can we make that happen?" Let's join now in our sung benediction, "There is a Love." Please join me in the words to extinguish our chalice. We extinguish this chalice that it might glow gently in our hearts. May it light our paths as we leave this place. May it guide our way until we are together again. I dream of a world where everyone, no exceptions, feels loved, cherished, special, where everyone, no exceptions, can participate in our shared life. And I'm committing to doing what I can to build this world.
And also a place where everyone can love themselves, no exceptions.
Yes, yes, a place where everyone can love themselves as well. So let's keep working. And let's also accept what is and move from here. I love you. Go in peace. We'll see you next week.